Okay, so we continue with Rav Bazak, and the last thing we saw was about Rabbi Yosef Kara, and he was a colleague of Rashi, and he talks about that אין לנו מידה טובה יותר במקרא יותר מפשוטו. That the best attribute or the best tool in learning the narrative is pshat, whatever pshat is. Okay. So now we are on the last paragraph on that page, ביטוי לרלוונטיות. Which page? It looks, they all look alike, but this is the way it looks like. It's really, if you, on the top of the page, it gets הפשטות המתחדשים. So now at the end. Okay? Let's ask me the question. Anyone who has source sheets, have it now. Good. People are holding on to it, I see, with two hands. Okay. No way. No. It's more precious than diamonds. The what? Oh, ביטוי לרלוונטיות, ממש at the end of the page. When you start with the essay of Rav Bazak, so if you turn the page, it's at the end of that page, the second page. Okay. So, היכולת ללמוד בכל דור, the ability to learn in every generation את פשוטו של מקרא, to understand the פשוטו של מקרא in every generation, ולהגיע לתובנות חדשות and to accomplish new insights, הוא ביטוי מוחשי ביותר לרלוונטיות של התורה. This is probably the best expression for what? For the relevancy of the Torah. הפשטות לא הפסיקו להתחדש, the פשט always renew itself. לא בתקופת חז"ל ולא בתקופת הביניים, it never stopped. Not in the time of the sages and not in the Middle Ages. הם מוסיפים להתחדש יום יום. And we continue to renew it every day בעזרתם של כלים חדשים המאירים באור יקרות את המקרא, בכל דור מוסיפים להבנת דבר השם. Every generation also developed different tools to what? To have a better understanding and enrichment of the pshat. You know, there are some generations that talked more about the דקדוקי המקרא. Okay, why this word and not that word? Then you have something else, you have methods of what we call, also by the way, just as a side note, the same, not the same way, but some tools that are being developed in other departments, you can use them for what? For Tanakh. And for other things. I mean, for example, it's just a side note, statistics. Okay, statistics have nothing to do with Torah necessarily, but sometimes when you, for example, you want to be choker, you want to research, for example, let's see, I just saw a research interesting, not my department and not my expertise at all, but I saw someone who was researching Rav Moshe Feinstein, Tshuvot Rav Moshe Feinstein. Okay, and basically with the usage of statistics and other tools, מחקרי tools, nothing to do with Tshuvot, nothing to do with Talmud, nothing to do with Tanakh. Basically what he tried to do is to try to see where was the peak of the Tshuvot, in what year, what's the reason for that, and then he compared it to other poskim in America, and why was it that Reb Moshe was becoming the posek when he was in Russia, he was a posek. Okay? You understand the difference between a posek and the posek, okay? So this is fascinating because he used tools that has nothing to do with shut and halacha and all of that, but he used it in order to prove a very interesting point. So basically what Rav Bazak says, we have different tools that are being developed in the academia and also in just b'chlal, b'yeshivot also, and basically they give us a better toolbox to try to understand Tanakh. הלומדים בגישת המרחב מגשימים אפוא את העיקרון היסוד של רש"י, אשר לאורו הלכו גדולי המפרשים בכל הדורות. And with the people who are with the approach of what? Of the מרחב, the expansion, they basically fulfill Rashi's values, that which is ללמוד את התנ"ך מתוך עצמו, מתוך הפשטות המתחדשים בכל יום. To learn the Tanakh from the Tanakh itself, from, and the pshatim that you have from yourself. Not from yourself that you look at Tanakh and, oh, I'm going to decide. Obviously, we all understand if you are a serious Tanakh learner, what do you do first? What you do in any other research. You see and you learn what people before you said. After you went through everyone who is relevant, then you have your own opinion. You can form your own opinion. You can agree, you can disagree, you can partially agree, but you don't come and say, אוקיי, עכשיו אני אגיד לכם איך לקרוא את זה. I'm going to tell you how to read it. And even if you have a pshat that no one else thought about it, you also understand that what? That today you came with this pshat, and tomorrow someone else can come up with a different pshat. So if you are really intellectually honest, you do a research of what was before you, and you understand that you are not the last word on everything. Okay. So let's continue. Okay. על כל הצדדים מוסכם, על כל הצדדים מוסכם, everyone agree, שיש להיזהר מפרשנויות בלתי מבוססות. Meaning, you can't just say, ככה נראה לי. Yeah, that's what I think, that's what I feel. כל הכבוד, that's very nice. We can go to a psychologist with that, but not to have a perush for the narrative. Okay? So you need to have something that it's based on something. Based on what? On the narrative itself, based on another parshan, based on many things. או מוטות על פי אג'נדה פוליטית. Also, don't give interpretation based on what? On your political agenda. או אידיאולוגית, או even ideological. אנטי-מסורתית, against the tradition. בעולם המחקר לא חסרות, למרבה הצער, דוגמאות לפרשנות הזאת. המבוססת על אג'נדה כזו, מבלי שיהיה להם בסיס אמיתי ורציני בכתוב. He says, I need to admit, sometimes when you read מחקרים של biblical critics, you see that it's really driven by agenda. As we saw on the other side as well. Look, people will never be able to be totally clear from their own upbringing, mindset, education, agenda. But the question is that what leads you, or is that just part of your background? And then he says, אולם לא יהיה נכון לבטל את כל הלגיטימיות של פרשנות הפשט בגלל מגמות אלו. Here he says something very interesting. He says, you might know that this guy has an agenda, a political agenda that you totally disagree. But it does not mean that his research and his parshanut is what? Is strafe. You are basically being required to do almost like Rabbi Meir to אחר, which is, תוכו לקח, קליפתו זרק. But Rabbi Meir was the Talmud of Elisha ben Avuya, who became אחר. He took the core and he threw the pit, not the pit, the peel, which means the fact that someone that you know that he or she writes within a political agenda or with an anti-religion agenda, whatever it is, does not mean that he or she does not have something that it's truth, and it might even be helpful. By the way, I'm going to maybe shake your bubble a bit, or burst your bubble a bit. We know that sometimes, especially in early years, in the 10th and 11th century, sometimes we took interpretations from the Karaim. Yeah. The way the Karaim read the Pasuk, they adapted it because it was not wrong. So it does not mean because you are a Karai, you are immediately treif. Okay? Now we obviously have more stigmatization, but back then, קבל את האמת ממי שאמרה. Accept the truth from whoever said it. Okay? So we have that. לפרשנות על דרך הפשט, יש השלכות על תחומים רבים. To have this interpretation on דרך הפשט has many ramifications on many areas. אחת מהן נוגעות לוויכוח על שאלת חטאיהם של גדולי האומה. One of the major points of dispute is how to approach sins of our biblical figures. שכן על פי הפשט, רבות מן הדמויות המרכזיות אכן חטאו או כשלו באירועים שונים. Because really, many figures in Tanakh really committed sin or failed in different events. ויכוח זה כונה באופן מטעה מאוד בשם תנ"ך בגובה העיניים. ורבים מגישת הקו הפכו אותו להיות הגורם המרכזי. He says, this dispute between גישת המרחב versus גישת הקו, you remember גישת הקו, okay? Is that how should we approach the חטאים of our biblical heroes, and they used the way we look at them as a tool to what? To say, oh, you don't know how to learn Tanakh, and you dismiss the heroes, and you have no emunat chachamim, and all of that. Okay. He says, אחת הטעויות או ההטעיות המקוממות ביותר בנושא זה, היא הצגת הדברים כאילו גישת המרחב באה מתוך אג'נדה רעיונית, שדמויות התנ"ך הן מורכבות, ומשום כך היא מפרשת את הפסוקים באופן המציג אותן כך. He says that גישת הקו, you remember the גישת הקו, which were basically, the what? No. גישת הקו, no, it's not about Zionism at all. It's about the approach that basically says biblical heroes didn't commit any sins, you are not even in a madrega to judge them, leave them alone, and גישת המרחב is what we spoke about before, which, yes, they committed sins, they are not exactly like us, but we still need to learn from them something. So he says that גישת הקו, the opposition, basically portray the people of גישת המרחב with someone with political agenda. So he says that's not fair. כמובן ההפך הוא הנכון. He says on the contrary, exactly the opposite. גישת המרחב נזהרת עד מאוד מלגשת לפסוקים מתוך אג'נדה כלשהי. היא מאמינה שלימוד תנ"ך צריך לבוא מתוך צניעות רבה, מתוך רצון לגבש את תפיסת העולם על פי התנ"ך, ולא לגבש את פרשנות התנ"ך על פי תפיסת עולם. He says exactly the opposite. We believe that we need to what? To try to understand, to create תפיסת עולם, a mindset of the Tanakh, not based on my mindset and my פרשנות, but rather exactly the opposite, which means I need to try to understand the world based on Tanakh, not to understand the Tanakh based on my perspective on the world. דומה שמי שניגש לתנ"ך בלא דעות מוקדמות ובלא עמדות שישפיעו על פרשנותו, לא יוכל להתעלם מכך שאכן דמויות רבות בתנ"ך מוצגות באופן מורכב ברמה זו או אחרת, ועליו לנסות להבין מה המסר של התנ"ך מכך. He says, be honest, if you come to the Tanakh without too much of an agenda, you understand that our biblical heroes are complicated. I'm not saying bad, I'm not saying great, I'm just saying complicated. They have different layers to them, okay? Even if you don't know anything, let's just think you just came from Mars and you came to this planet, okay? And you read Bereshit, and then you see that Abraham is so hospitable and he's so great, and at the same time he sends his son out to the desert with his mother with a little bottle of water and a piece of bread. You're not going to ask yourself a question of, you feed everyone else and your own son you expel and you give him a little bit of bread and one bottle of water? Obviously you need to ask yourself some kind of a question. You're not going to ask how come that Yaakov says to his father, Ani esav bechorecha? If you don't ask those questions, something is I don't know, maybe you read a different Tanakh, or maybe I don't know what you do, but you definitely need to ask a question. So then he says, לא כאן אולם מי שניגש מתוך עמדה שאותה גיבש לעצמו ועל פיה כל דמויות התנ"ך הן מושלמות וללא רבב, יגיע בהכרח לפרשנות מסולפת של פשוטו של מקרא. מסולף, which means basically to deviate from the truth. He says exactly the opposite. If you come to Tanakh and you put blinds on your eyes and you think all of them are so pious and so righteous and they are so blameless and sinless, you are going to, at the end of the day, you're going to come out with a wrong outcome. לא כאן המקום להרחיב בשאלה כיצד יש להבין את משמעות הדרך המורכבת שבה מוצגות דמויותיהם של אישי התנ"ך. This is not the place to try to understand why is it that the Torah describes and delineates those heroes in such a complicated way. בקצרה נציין שנראה שהתנ"ך מבקש להציג דמויות שעל אף גדולתן וקרבתן לקדוש ברוך הוא הם עדיין אנושיות וכך ניתן ללמוד מהן משהו. He says, in short, I would like just to suggest that I think that the Torah described them in such a complicated way to show that they were humans, and we can learn something from them. הוא גם מלמד אותנו על חובת האחריות המוטלת על כל אדם ועל יכולתו לשוב בתשובה. It teaches us also about the responsibility that each one of us has, and also our ability to do תשובה, ולכפר על חטאיו ושגיאותיו. הוא מורה לנו שאין אדם גדול ככל שיהיה. It teaches us that there is no person, he can be the greatest one, המחוסן בפני חטא והפטור משמירת עצמו כך. That you are basically immune from committing sins, and that you can keep yourself always sinless. מכל מקום, יש להדגיש שנושא דמותן של דמויות המקרא איננו עומד בפני עצמו, אלא הוא סעיף מסוים בתוך שאלה רחבה יותר, עצם הלגיטימיות של לימוד על דרך הפשט. It says the main issue, don't lose sight. How we approach biblical heroes and their sins, this is a subcategory. The main category is what? Are we allowed to continue to learn pshat? Which Gishat Akav says no, and we say yes. Sorry, not we. It's not fair to say we. I'm not going to include all of you. I don't know what you think. I. Okay. David veBatsheva. Oh, everyone is getting excited. Okay. By the way, did I? Because if not, we can do it Bezrat Hashem after we finish with it. We learned David and Batsheva, right?
No, we learned
Shimshon we did. David and Batsheva, I thought we did.
When the chairs were facing that way.
Ah.
And it was a series of like 7.
Okay. So let's put it like that. How many of you remember what we learned about David and Batsheva? No, I taught it. I remember I taught it, but it was many years ago, 6 years ago. Okay. בסדר, נו, נראה. Okay, בסדר, okay. Maybe. So let's talk a little bit about David and Batsheva. Okay. נקודת המחלוקת השנייה נוגעת למודעות לקיומן של מחלוקות גם בדברי חז"ל והראשונים. It says another point of discussion between גישת הקו and גישת המרחב is the awareness of disputes among Chazal. Meaning, this I always try to tell you that among the shiurim, if you hear a rabbi says the Gemara holds that you need to do A, B, and C, not halacha, I'm talking about hashkafa, don't believe him. The Talmud is basically a book that compiles many opinions, different opinions from different rabbis, different times, about the same issue. And some of them saying that from experience, some of them saying that because of their interpretation to different psukim in a different way, some of them has a different masoret from their rabbi. Okay, so the Talmud does not have one opinion about what you need to do. Not in halacha, but in halacha we have a framework, but in hashkafa definitely not. So he says you need to know that there is dispute between our sages and the Rishonim. המחלוקת של היום אינה רחוקה ממחלוקות שהיו קיימות מדורי דורות. And what the dispute that we have over today, it's not that far from what we used to have in generations before us. אך נראה שגישת הקו מעדיפה להכריע כדעה אחת בחז"ל או במפרשים, ולהתעלם מקיומן של דעות אחרות הקרובות יותר לרובד הפשט. גישת הקו basically suggests and prefers to do what? To take one opinion in Chazal and to say, כזה ראה וקדש, this is the only opinion, and to ignore other opinions, despite the fact that it might be that the other opinions might be closer to the pshat rather than this one. לעומת זאת, גישת המרחב תומכת בהצגת דעות שונות מבלי להכריע ביניהם באופן קטגורי, וסוברת שהלומד יכול לבחור לעצמו את הפשט המתיישב יותר בליבו. And גישת המרחב says, no, we need to share all the opinions, and then it's your responsibility to choose whatever you think it's the best פשט. שכן אם נחלקו חכמים באיזה השקפה ודעה שאין תכליתה מעשה מן המעשים, הרי אין לומר שם הלכה כפלוני. Do you hear? That's the Rambam. The Rambam says if you have a dispute between 2, 3, 4 Tanaim or Amoraim, and it's not about halacha of how to do something, but it's about what? It's a hashkafa. What is hashkafa? Your mindset, how you look at life or whatever it is. So then you can't say halacha keploni. Meaning you cannot determine this is the only hashkafa. In hashkafa, and look, I'm not naive. I understand, and I'm know maybe little bit about education. When you give too many choices to the younger generation, and even to adults sometimes, but especially to the younger generation, it's confusing. It's hard. So it's easier to teach one opinion. And yeah, and zehu. And everyone, and that's what you are being raised with, and this is the way you are educated, and it's less confusing. When you have too many options, it's too confusing. And it's hard to educate people and to teach people. However, first you need to be a fool to think that he or she will not discover later on in their lives that there are other opinions. And if they are not trained to think that there is more than one opinion, you are in source. That's A. B, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to hide opinions. I'm not talking about some opinions that are totally out of the, and you need to understand the age and the sophistication and all of that. But you cannot. I think it's to minimize the Torah, A, and B, you will be responsible that whenever that person go out to the world and he or she discovers that there are other opinions, they will blame you for that, and probably they will take the other opinions over your opinion. Now, in groups and camps, that their kids don't go anywhere else but rather continue in the same izgarot, and the same izgarot basically are teaching them the same thing over and over and over, so you have less of concern, okay? Because if you are in Kita Aleph and they tell you that David HaMelech, for example, was waiting for the get from Uriah to come, okay, and that's what they teach you in second grade and in third grade and then in high school and then in Yeshiva Gvuha, so you don't know there are any other opinions. And even if you learn Gemara Ketubot, you don't really get there because they are Agadeta, right? So you just skip it over, right? But if you have children that go to other places, to other Mizgarot, and then they go to university, and then they might take a Shiur Tanakh, you need to prepare them, you need to make them ready. Yes?
Are there many cases in Rashi, and people comment about this, that Rashi brings quite a few explanations about something, and they say, obviously Rashi wasn't himself happy with one explanation, maybe not with the second one, that's why he brings so many and leaves it to the reader to decide which one fits him best.
There are many opinions about why Rashi chose whatever Midrash chose, A. B, why he cut it off after the first one, when in other Perushim he gave 3 examples. Yeah, so there are many speculations, really. We don't know. I don't know. Okay. So he continues and he says like that: להמחשת העניין אציין שתי דוגמאות, אחת נרחבת וידועה ואחת נקודתית הקשורה לפולמוס האחרון. So he's going to illustrate his point with 2 examples. Okay. הדוגמה לפרשה נרחבת היא חטא דוד ובת שבע. So he's going to illustrate it by pointing out few things with דוד and בת שבע. מבלי להאריך בדברים נציין את הידוע, without to go into too many details, I'm just going to highlight what is known, שעל דרך הפשט, that really based on the simple understanding, חטא דוד בשני חטאים חמורים. דוד committed 2 major sins. את אוריה החיתי הכית בחרב, ואת אשתו לקחת לך לאישה. That's based on שמואל ב', that's what שמואל, that in ספר שמואל, that's what it says. את אוריה החיתי הכית בחרב, you killed אוריה, you are the cause, and the second one is you took his wife. הוא הכיר בחטאו ושב בתשובה, שבשכרה בוטל עונש המוות שהיה עליו, אך עדיין נותרו עונשים רבים עליו ועל זרו. He admitted his sin, and because he admitted his sin, so Hashem had some mercy on him and he didn't kill him, but there are some punishments about him and his descendants. Okay. הגישה הרווחת בחז"ל, the main approach in חז"ל is אכן ביארה את הפסוקים כפשוטם. Most of the commentators, and by the way, he is correct. That's why I ask if anyone remembers the shiur. Most of the mefarshim basically blame David for these 2 chataim. There is some kind of variation, safek eshetish, but the chet is there. However, there is an opinion, אך גישת הקו מדגישה הדגישה הרבה יותר את דעת רבי יהודה הנשיא ורבי שמואל בר נחמני, שלפיה כל האומר דוד חטא אינו אלא טועה. והדברים מבוססים על כך שבאופן פורמלי בת שבע הייתה מגורשת בגט היוצא למלחמת דוד, אף בכך אין שום הצדקה מוסרית ללקיחת בת שבע, ואוריה החיתי היה מורד במלכות. Which means the justification that גישת הקו always like to take is she was not really a married woman because there is a get. Before you go to war there is a get, and also Uriah deserved death. Why? Because he was mored b'malchut. Now, before we go any further, read the story. When David was with Bathsheba, Uriah was still alive. The entire idea of the get is that what? If he does not come back, because just imagine, it needs to be like that. Why? Because if you tell me that every woman that her husband went to war, she's basically megoreshet, it means what? That when they come back, they need to do what? Kiddushin mechadash. Did you see that anywhere in Chazal? Definitely not. So basically, it only says that in order to save her from aginut, if he does not come from the battlefield, and you don't find him, and you try to find him, and I guess a year goes by and you don't find him, so then we decided that she's megoreshet velo aguna. And if you want to tell me that if she had an affair with someone, she will not be considered as what? As eshet ish zinta? ברור. אבל at that moment, so you say למפרע. So למפרע, the bi'ah was what? בי'at znut? I don't know what's worse, okay? But whatever it is, no. Yeah. If you do it retroactively, it doesn't make it better, okay? So that's one. The second thing is, so now you tell me that Uriah was mored b'malchut. Uriah was mored b'malchut when? Later, when David ordered Uriah to come back, Uriah was a great soldier. And not only that, okay, so he said, Ve'adoni Yoav. Okay? Why he was mored b'malchut? Because he said, first, my general Yoav is in the field, and I understand why you can understand this a mored b'malchut, someone who rebelled against the king. But at the same time, I can tell you, what do you want from him? He just came from the battlefield. The only people he remembers now are what? His generals and his colonels and his soldiers, and that's it. That's what he remembers. With all due respect, this king sits like on a throne and drinking coffee. Okay, he's not with them in the battlefield. So mored b'malchut, Avshalom, is a mored b'malchut. Okay? This is someone who is a mored b'malchut. Yerovam was a mored b'malchut David. Uriah. So he said, Yoav before the king. Now, I understand. I don't know what is king all about. And the king, it's good to be a king, right? You can do whatever you want. And if he decided he's mored b'malchut, but that was only after. Now, I'll take you in a second. So the thing is, basically what he says, look, most of the Parshanim say what? He committed a sin. Variations of sins, but he committed two sins. But Gishat HaKav ignores it and based their idea, and we saw it at Rav Dessler and Rav Aviner, that says what? We going to say, Kol HaOmer David Chata Eino Ela To'eh. Everyone who says that David committed a sin, he himself, he is mistaken. And why? Because of these two things. Now, the question that we need to ask really is not so much about Gishat HaKav, about that approach. We need to really ask Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, how do they read Tanakh? When Natan HaNavi came to David HaMelech and says to him this mashal kivsat arash, and Natan HaNavi says, Ata ish, and says Chatati. How do they read it? Leave Rav Aviner, Rav Dessler, I don't know, Moshe Rabbeinu. How did they read the pasuk Chatati? Oh, so they say, my might level, in a way, what I did is to explain to you how they are smart people, okay? The fact that we don't agree does not mean that they are not smart. They are very smart people. That led them to the idea that what? Not our level, not your level. Based on his level, it considered like. Okay? Very good. Yes?
So David basically picked and chose who he would punish for being Mored Malchus, because when Shimei ben Gera cursed him, he let him go. When Uriah Hitti said Yoav before him, that's Mored Malchus. But the fact of the matter is, he probably did this to Uriah because he wanted his wife.
Correct? Correct.
And I think when they say Eino Ela Torah, they're basically saying you don't have a right to judge, you weren't there, Alta did it
No, we'll try to. Wait. Let's see. Wait. Let's see. Okay. אולם. בסוגיה במסכת כתובות, there is a סוגיה עם כתובות in דף ט', העוסקת בשאלה כיצד הותרה בת שבע להינשא לדוד אם הייתה אשת איש בשעה שהוא בא עליה לראשונה. So the Gemara already dealt with the issue. How come that David was with Bathsheba if she was an Eshet Ish at that moment? The question is, how was she allowed to marry him after? That's the question. Why? Because Eshet Ish asura laba'al ve'asura labo'el. That's the halachic ramification. Okay, if she had an affair, leave it on that. We'll kill her later on. But she's not allowed to go back to her husband, and she's not allowed to be with her lover. So הובאו שתי דעות. כשהראשונה מחמירה עוד יותר עם דוד. אתם אונס אבי. The first opinion is what? He raped her. Atam ones havi, which means he took her by force, which is horrible. Okay? He took her by force and she couldn't resist, and therefore, זה לא ממש lover, or it was not an affair. Okay? It was not an affair. So basically, that's how she was allowed to what? To marry him after. Not only that she was allowed to marry him after in a way, he had to, if she wanted. והשנייה סוברת שבת שבע אכן הייתה מגורשת בגלל הגט של היוצאים למלחמת בית דוד. The second opinion says that what? That she was really, retroactively she was מגורשת, and therefore she was not ממש אשת איש. בסדר, אוקיי. מקורות אחרים בחז"ל מניחים בבירור שבת שבע היא אשת איש לכל דבר. It says, other opinion says that Bathsheba was a married woman at that moment. בסנהדרין, in סנהדרין עם ק"ז, נאמר שהקדוש ברוך הוא סירב לבקשתו של דוד למחול לו על החטא, שכבר עתיד שלמה בנך לאמור בחוכמתו, היחטא איש אש בחיקו ובגדיו לא תשרפנה, אם ילך איש על הגחלים ורגב לא תכוונה, כן הבעל אשת רעהו לא ינקה כל הנוגע בה. The Gemara in Sanhedrin in Kuvzayin says that David begged God to forgive him, and Hashem says, no, I'm not going to forgive you, not in your days. I'll forgive you only in Shlomo's days. And why I will not forgive you? Because your son is going to say in a Mishlei that like you are walking on fire, there is no way that you are not going to get burned. If you're going to set fire in your shirt, obviously your shirt is going to get burned. If you're going to be with a married woman, you're going to get burned.
But if she was a married woman, then what is Shlomo?
Oh, you're asking a very good question. Very good question. You are asking, Rega. We are going to add to it. Not only that she was allowed to go back to David, the king that came after David, who built the Beit HaMikdash, was Shloimeh. Yedidia. Yedid Hashem. Hashem loved him. We spoke about him. So the idea is that we obviously we have a major question here. So, וגישה זו נזכרת שוב ושוב, ובמקום אחר נאמר, ואת הכבשה ישלם 4 that's in the משל, כבשת הרש, that he needs to pay 4 times the כבשה, the sheep. אמר רבי יהודה בר חנינא, אמר לה הקדוש ברוך הוא לדוד, רבי יהודה בן חנינא says, Hashem says to David, אתה ניאפת אחת. What is ניאפת? No, adultery. ניאוף, not enough. Not enough. 16 נאיפות יבואו לך. You will get 16 punishments or whatever it was. אתה רצחת אחת. You murdered someone. 16 נרצחות יבואו לך. רבי חנינה. רבי יהודה בר חנינה in מדרש שוחר טוב. מדרש שוחר טוב is a little bit of a מדרש מאוחר. Around, I think, 11th century. המחלוקת בחז"ל מופיעה גם בדברי המפרשים. רבים מן הראשונים פרשו את הפרשה כפשוטה ואף הסיקו ממנה לקחים רעיונים. רבי יהודה החסיד הבין שהמסר הוא להודיע כראש החסידים שכל עסקו לשם שמיים, ואף על פי כן שראה אישה נכשל, ואף על פי שקרוב לזקנה, וכל שכן בחור צריך להיזהר מלהביט באישה ולהתרחק מאישה. So in ספר חסידים, for example, he understood that דוד המלך חטא in what? Even though he was an older person, he was walking on the roof, he was looking at the places that he shouldn't look, he was attracted, and he committed a sin. So if an older person can do it, a young man, even more so. So what do you see from me? This is Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. He was called Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid for a reason, right? He was definitely not a liberal, he was not a pluralistic, and he was not didn't come with a political agenda, okay? He was not from Gishat HaKav, and he was not from Gishat HaMerchav, okay? He was just a good Jew, okay, in Germany. And basically he looked at the Sipur and he says, it's come to teach you something. It's come to teach you that you should never say, I'm not going to commit what? A sin, because you can commit a sin. You know, Rabbi Ishmael says what? The Mishnah says, לא יתה את הנר, לא יקרא לאור הנר, שמא יתה. Remember that? That you shouldn't, on Shabbat, you shouldn't read, learn next to a candle, because you're going to tilt the candle in order to see more. He says, no, I'm going to learn, and I'm not going to do it. And obviously what did he do? He did it, and he says, אני צריך להביא פרה שמנה לחטאת. I need to bring a big cow for חטאת, בגלל שעברתי על דברי חכמים. Sounds very similar to שלמה המלך, right? אני ארבה ולא אסור. Right? I will have more women, more gold, more horses, and I will not deviate. No, ואנחנו יודעים מה קרה. We know exactly what happened. רלב"ג למד מכאן מסר אחר. So רלב"ג learned a different lesson. להודיע שאין ראוי לאדם שיפנה אל התענוגים בעת היות חברו בצער. He learned from that that you should not have a wonderful life when your friends are in צער. וראה מה קרה לדוד, מהרה בתיתו, אז לעצמו, התענוגים, עד שחשק בבת שבע עם ידיעתו שהיא אשת איש, ובא עליה ותער לו. כי זה היה סיבה אל שהוסיף פשע על חטאתו, והשתדל שימות אוריה בחרב בני עמון. This is unbelievable. Basically he says, דוד המלך is a king. And yeah, I understand. He did not want to join the war that he sent his people. He was also older and they asked him, stay home. But stay home and daven, say Tehillim, right? Compose some, do mishpat, take care of the people. Don't go on your balcony looking for women. And which, by the way, I would just say one thing, and which I still, after so many years, I still don't get exactly why her mikveh was on the roof.
Well, in Israel, they have baths on the roof.
Maybe she was Sunday.
The Farshim says that she was bathing in a mikveh, okay? But, so at least he knew that she was not nida, right? So, the what?
You have to understand real estate. You never buy a building for the view, because you don't know what someone else is going to build. When they built her house, it was the highest one. David built a higher one.
Interesting. יפה, יכול להיות. לא יודע, יכול להיות. I don't know. But the thing is that, look, what Ralbag says is that David HaMelech, instead of being בצערם של ישראל, he basically looked for pleasures, and that led him to what? To Bathsheba, and he calls her what? עם ידיעתו שהיא אשת איש. He knew it. And by the way, the Tanakh says that he knew it. He asked people about her, and they told him. A. B. And he says it also add a different crime. And what was the crime? To kill her husband. ואילו אברבנאל כתב, and now we are in the 15th century in Spain, לא יסבול דעתי להקל בחטאת דוד, ולא אכחיש האמת הפשוט. I will not tolerate the idea to be lenient with David, and I'm not going to deny the simple truth. אם הכתוב קראו חוטא והוא הודה בחטאו, איך היה טועה אדם באמינו? The narrative says, you are a חוטא. He himself says, חטאתי. So I am going to say that what? שהוא לא חטא. I'm better than the נביא. And he says, טוב לי שאומר שחטא מאוד והודה מאוד ושב בתשובה גמורה וקיבל עונשו ובזה נתכפרו עוונותיו. It's better for me to say he committed a sin, he admitted the sin, he repented, he went through teshuva והשם atoned for it. Who, David? Oh, first child died and also Avshalom. The story with Avshalom was probably as a result of it as well.
And Amnon and
all sorts of
But never admitted. נכון. Right, that's true. Right. די במקורות אלו, שהם דוגמאות חלקיות בלבד. It's enough, I think, with just few of those examples, כדי ללמד שהגישה המבינה את חטא דוד כפשוטו והסוברת שדבר השם העולה מן הפרשה הוא הלקחים שיש להפיק מחטאים אלו, says this approach that basically understands that David committed really a sin and also explains that we have lessons that we can learn from it. The רלב"ג, אברבנאל, לקח טוב. היא גישה קדומה ולגיטימית לחלוטין. This is what? An ancient approach. It's not a new approach. You know, some of the accusations is, oh, this is a new approach. You are liberal, they're modern. That's not modern and liberal. This is what? I'm just repeating, we are going to the sources. גישת הקו מתעלמת במקורות אלו ואינה מציגה אותם בפני תלמידיה. This approach basically denies their students from having any access to their opinions. Yeah. גישת המרחב סבורה שהתעלמות זו היא החמצה של דבר השם, לפחות על פי פרשנות מסורתית מקובלת בעם ישראל. Now, let's play a game. Yeah, why not? We can play a game. If I teach you that Bathsheba was not a married woman, and that Uriah was mored במלכות, and when it says chet, it's in his madrega. What are your lessons from the story? I'm not sure. You are not in that madrega. Okay. What different levels for different people, and what are the day-to-day lessons?
I can't do it, but somebody else can, which brings me what's my wife. How can you accept all the
I think it's going to lead to confusion. And also, when God forbid, and I'm not saying that but when God forbid there is something that it's totally inappropriate that's going on, there is some kind of a justification because this person is on such a high madrega, maybe it's a different thing. It's very dangerous. Now, let's go to the other approach. We need to be intellectually honest, and we also need to be careful. There is danger in every approach. Now, let's play the game. I'm telling you that David Chata might be Safek Eshet Ish, might be Eshet Ish. How exactly she was allowed to be back with him, a little bit problematic, it's complicated. God forgave him half, partially, but not totally. And now, what are the lessons that you can have? Oh, okay. Even David HaMelech did tshuva. He can fail, and he was able to overcome despite the embarrassment, and everyone knew that. This was terrible embarrassment, and everyone knew about him. So he did it. Third, you need to be careful where you're looking. I don't know what else. You need to, when you send people to war, you can't. Don't bathe on the roof. Yeah. Or make sure that your neighbors don't build higher than you, right? So all sorts, you see all sorts of lessons, but what's the danger? דוד חטא, ו-with all the respect, בסדר, אז עשה תשובה, אבל מי אמר שהפרק תהילים כ"ד was written before he did תשובה, or it was after he was, with בת-שבע? Okay, so you start in a way to look at דוד המלך with some kind of a diminished look. And this is also can lead you to, בסדר, דוד, יעקב. This is why you need to have, obviously, a good teacher, but also to have a balance in your life and to understand that with all the respect that yes, you have a brain and you have a way to analyze things, you also need to understand that at the end of the day, he is still David HaMelech. He's still the one who wrote Tehillim. He's still the one, David ben Ishai of the Meshichecha. And it doesn't say Shai, of the Meshichecha. It says David ben Ishai, ma lasot. Okay? So they made it to Tanakh. And we didn't. But now maybe if we would be in their time, we will make it too. I hope it's not the villains, but rather than the righteous people. But whatever it is, we need to understand that yes, there are people like us, and that's their greatness. That's their greatness. When you know that a person like that could reach his madriga, to fail in that madriga and to be able to continue to overcome it, I know, for me, it's a great example. Yes.
There's another danger on the other side.
The others.
Happened to me.
Uh-huh.
I went to a class that somebody gave many years ago on Yitzchak. And he said, Avram and Yitzchak, after the Akedah, they never spoke. And I'm sitting listening, but you know what the truth? I then asked, I checked. They never spoke before the Akedah. They never spoke after the Akedah. But the person presented, because they never spoke after the Akedah, means there was a bad problem in their relationship. And so you have to be very careful who is teaching.
Right. This is also true. And I would say another thing that if you raise that issue is sometimes it's very attractive to do it, but you need to be very careful in doing it, is to do a psychological analysis to families in Tanakh and to individuals in Tanakh based on modern psychology. No, I'm not joking. It's modern psychology and assumptions that we have might be very different than what they had in the ancient time. Fathers and sons didn't talk if there was no need. There is no sachnashim. Let's have, what is sachnashim? Sichot nefesh. Like you take your child, each child separate, you go to a coffee, or you go to a trip, so you have a quality time to speak to them. There's no such a thing. Okay, not in Jewish families and not in non-Jewish families. Okay, there is no such a thing. It's like, trying to judge love and romance. Romance was only in the 18th century. Okay, the first time I found in the Tshuva that there is something to do with love was the 14th century, the Rashba in Spain. And that they wanted to cancel Shidduchim because the granddaughter told her grandfather, I really don't like the guy. That's the first Tshuva I found. Does not mean that does not exist anything else, but I did a little bit of a research, that love was a component in the decision. Before that, אין love. מה זה love? מה זה love? יש Jews and non-Jews. I need a woman to cook and to bake and to do laundry and to have children. And if she's not good for children, this is really not good. And I need financial stability. That's it.
What about
שיר השירים? Shlomo HaMelech had 1,000 of them, so he had no lack of means of money. And this is just the love between Hashem and Am Yisrael, אבל זה לא love שלהם. This is a very romantic description. ויהביה. Does not mean that there was no love. I'm saying that love was not the reason to get married. And the fact that, for example, Rivka and Yitzchak didn't talk does not mean anything about their love. Okay, the only time that they really talk was when she gave him an ultimatum. Since then, right? So the idea is that it doesn't reflect necessarily on their love or lack of love. ממש לא. שיר השירים is a very poetic and it's ממש a love song, נכון? מצוין. אבל this is not a love what we will call לאו של דיבור או של מעשה, זה ממש לאו של physicality, כן? לא, the description is physicality, but it's not the love that we talk about. No, the couple love each other. There is more desire, I will call it. You with me? That's why Chazal wanted to what? They didn't know what to do with Shir HaShirim. It was a problem until they came along and they says there's a mashal between Knesset Israel והקדוש ברוך הוא. But I'll clarify my point. I think this is not clear. What I'm saying is that people didn't get married for love. So, for what? Arrangements. Exactly. It was between Jews and between the Jewish communities and the non-Jewish communities, the same thing. The idea is that what I wanted to say, that to take psychology, modern psychology, and to try to dress it on ancient cultures, זה לא הוגן. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you can hear many rabbis, they're making like almost a psychological analysis to what's going on between Yosef and his brothers and between and it's nice. You can learn lessons, but you need to be very careful not to determine that they did something wrong based on modern psychology. That's basically was my point. Yes.
When I've heard classes from people like from Har Etzion, they very much will go say, remember what the Tarbut was. It's not like
sure.
Today.
Yeah.
And even if they go, it's like they'll use that.
Right. It's true. Okay. I'm not here next week. We'll be here Be'ezrat Hashem the following week. Hold on. We have one more page.